They can hear us, but if the other end is that here.
I'm just go live on Facebook.
They can't hear you.
So we are recording live on Facebook and on a practice session, so good to go.
Fantastic. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the MRC Annual Meeting for 2022. I'm Karen Fassell, President of the MRC Board. We're very excited to be here today to give you a year in review, go over our election results, and very happy to be here in person and have some folks in the audience with us. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And for the folks that are participating online, we're looking forward to a full agenda. So we have, first off, we'll be talking about the election results, and then we'll be going into the treasurer's report and providing a sort of a little review of the year, which was very momentous for MRC and for the plans. We'll be hearing from a couple of our consultants on the state of waste management in Maine and how it affects MRC, and sort of a little reminder of the importance of the plant to us and to the members. We'll be hearing from Revere Capital Advisors, our prospective partners. And we're giving the board an opportunity to provide some closing comments. And we'll, of course, be open for public comment and questions and comments at the end. So with that, we'll get right to it and talk about our election results. And what I wanted to do before I talked a little bit about the election process and the results was to give just a little bit of background on the MRC board for folks that aren't as fully informed on how MRC works and the board process. And I would also like to take the opportunity to recognize and thank our fellow board members for their service and for their many hours of work and this often thankless job. But as many of you know, the MRC is made up of 9 board members. Everybody serves at large, so they're not representing the community they come from, but representing all members. It's voluntary and unpaid, and the terms are for 3 years. And I'm not going to go through and name everybody individually, but I would encourage folks to look at the MRC website and learn about where folks are from and the types of positions they're from. But they're town managers, public works directors, selectmen, and whatnot. So what happens with the election process is that in October of every year, MRC sends out a nomination form to each member, and folks are able to nominate a person or individual for the board. The qualifications are that they must be a legal resident, an employee, or an elected or appointed official of a member community. And folks only need 1 nomination to get on the slate. People, we can accept it's first come, first serve, up to 9 people to be nominated. So in November, ballots go out and each member gets 1 vote. Votes are weighted, and the top 3 vote getters are then elected for the next 3-year term. This year, we had 5 nominees, which is fantastic for the 3 open slots. We encourage folks to put their name in, and we're always encouraged by interest and participation in that. So we had 2 incumbents that were nominated, Tony Smith and Bob Butler, and we had Eric Treewergy, who's the chairman of the Surrey Select Board and also on the Blue Hills Surrey Transfer Station Board. We had Paula Scott, who's the Hamden Town Manager, also our host community. And we had Ella Bowman, who's the Oakland Town Manager, who has previously served on the MRC Board. And without further ado, the election results are that our top 3 vote getters were Bob Butler, Ella Bowman, and Tony Smith. So congratulations to our newly re-elected and newly elected board members. I do believe, of course, we have Tony and Bob here, so congratulations. I do believe Ella was going to be able to pop in and just so folks could see Ella, if she's there. Is she out there?
So I'm
Great.
just promoting her right now.
Fantastic. So we'll just say hello and congratulations to Ella in person.
This takes a couple of seconds.
Yes. So the terms are calendar year terms, so Ella would be participating for the first time as a board member at our January board meeting.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, hello,
Yes.
Ella. How are you doing?
I'd like to thank everybody for the support. This is really incredible. It's exciting for me to be back on the team. You've done such an amazing job. I know you've had so many tripping points along the line. So it's going to be exciting to get back into this where you've already taken it. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. If there's anything that I can do above and beyond, please don't hesitate to ask. And
Thank you so much, and thank you for offering to volunteer your time for this important endeavor. We look forward to seeing you in January.
okay, sounds good. Thank you, everybody.
Next up, we have the treasurer's report, and our board treasurer, Sophie Wilson, is unfortunately not available. Oh, sorry. I forgot. We have an important breaking announcement that we wanted to make. That was not on the agenda, official agenda. Our esteemed vice president of the board has a little recognition and
Got the right person.
presentation. That's the esteemed part.
Mr. Ridley. Yes. You didn't run this year. I know. You retired this year. Thank you. Thank you. It's been great work. Dana didn't run, he retired. He's been retired, he said, from his real job for over 22 years. He's now my mentor. I'm not gonna tell you his age or mine, but oh, thank you. And members of the board. Like, thank you with this. Black in recognition of 4 years of, yeah. White on class, no class. I'm not making light. Yeah. So your recognition of 4 years of dedicated service, Dana Wrigley, senior 2022. Thanks. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you to all the board. It's been a pleasure to meet with you, and I wish every community, all 115 communities, could have somebody on the board that realize what a dedicated group they've got working for them. It's really a pleasure to work with you folks, and it's so dedicated to get this plant back online, so I'll still be watching to see when it starts.
Thank you, Dana. All right, now moving on to the treasurer's report. Sophie Wilson is not available to be here today, so our executive director, Mike Carroll, is going to run over sort of the financials and the proposed budget for next year.
I'm gonna do my best. So what we'll review is we'll review the cash balances on account. We'll do the 2023 draft budget overview for adoption process. And the 2023 member tip BPI adjustment just came out Tuesday. That's the national adjustment that comes out, and that was 7.11%. And that puts the current tip rate as of January 1 up to 82.69. So the treasurer's annual report, the cash balances are as follows. There's $1,359,643,000 in the wealth management account. There's currently $1,604,000 in the contingency account, $118,532 in the operating account, and $107,951 in the distribution and development account, for a total of $2,586,740 currently in the accounts. So with the budgets, we've been working very hard on the proposed budget because we're in a transitional phase with moving into next year with our partnership, moving forward with a partnership, or if we end up standing alone for a while. So what we have done here is we proposed 2 budgets, because come January, we'll submit one to the board for approval because we'll know where we're at. with our closing and our partnership, or how much longer we might have to stand alone until we get to that point. So the first one is for the income with the sale of the Hamden plant. So that's going into the partnership. In the first column is our current budget that we're working off of in the fiscal year for 2022, and the next column is 2023. The significant differences here is, as part of the partnership moving forward, MRC would play a big role in the management of the waste for the whole facility, which will require adding employee, office space, office equipment, software, and such things as that. So the budget increased to $703,550, and that is the major increase there. But you'll notice what's happening here is we're going to go back to getting the annual lease payments, and then we're going to get a management fee, which is equated to $405,000. That will stop us from dipping into the wealth management account to fund what we need funded for the operation. So that puts it so that we're no longer using that account. We're actually generating enough revenue moving forward. For the expenses of that, you'll see the jump was in the administration, which I just talked about. The next big jump would be down in the transfer to investment funds. So even though it's 700,000, you see the big jump there. We are going to start paying back the wealth management account for the funds that we've drawn out of it, keeping the plant idle and carrying the plant. So the first year, we're estimating $102,000 can be paid back to that wealth management account. The funds that we've been taking out of that account to secure the facility and the carrying costs since we've had the facility and been taking care of it. The next is projected if we don't get to that quick closing. So this is if we stand alone in the new year for some time. So once again, the first column of the income is the approved for 2022. The second column is for 2023. We were able, now that we have the ownership of the plant and we are in control of things, we were able to cut the budget quite a bit because we're the ones making the agreements with the vendors with how much gas is being used with the power and that type of thing. So with that said, the municipal dues just changed a little bit due to the increase in the waste amount. Annual lease payments we're not showing coming in, but we would need to use $346,000 from our wealth management account to operate until we came into that partnership or receive some kind of finance. So the proposed budget for that for standing alone is $515,000 compared to last year's, which was $637,258 for income. On the expense side of things, once again, we were able to cut things down where we were in control. The big one would be the expense to secure the CRM plant. That was a dramatic decrease. There's still an increase in admin, but that's mostly due to health insurance, and also we're increased travel and vehicle allowance. But pretty much other than that, everything stayed the same, except for this significant drop in the expense to secure the CM and the expenses of the $515,000. And that's if we are standing alone and not entering into partnership come time when it's time to propose the budget in January at the board meeting. Any questions on the budget?
Yeah, taxes included in those numbers somewhere in there.
I don't believe so. I don't know the answer to that, Bob. I'd have to look into that.
Okay.
He stumped me right there.
So I apologize. I just thought of it.
Okay. Any other questions?
No other questions? From the board anyway?
Oh, that was quick.
Okay. All right. So moving on.
Yeah.
So Mike will get your little overview,
Yes.
year in review.
Yes. So this one I'm prepared. So, it has been a long, busy year, but much progress has been made. Over the next few minutes, I will present a high-level review of the last 12 months. What has happened in the last 12 months? Progress MRC and its members have made since ownership and our plans moving forward. It is essential to remind everyone that it has been over 2 years since the facility's been closed, but the MRC has only been in control of its destiny for the last 4 months. So let's begin. What has happened? After the first year, MRC started experiencing a lack of communication with the bondholders who were currently in control of the facility. We were growing very concerned and losing patience with them as we were not receiving any response from them. After their former bidder lost exclusivity and drug the process out for almost a year due to lack of financing, MRC finally decided enough is enough and took charge of the situation. We drew a line in the sand and we were prepared to take any action necessary if we did not get a resolution from the bondholders to move forward. Bondholders did agree to a final process on the last attempt to sell the facility to fulfill their fiduciary duty to the investors in their group. MRC agreed to comply with the final sale process and work with bondholders under the following conditions. Hire a receiver to act as a liaison between bondholders and a go-between moderator for all other parties. Hire an investment banker. The investment banker will solicit qualified buyers for the receiver. Buyers must show proof of financial and technical capability to operate the facility before participating in a sale or auction process. MRC must be part of the buyer approval process. Buyers must be able to financially close on a sale of the facility on or before June 30th. If no buyers are qualified to attend the auction, then MRC could purchase the facility as a stalking horse bidder for $1.5 million. Now that the process moving forward had been settled, MRC scheduled its first special board meeting with members in executive session in mid-February. The meeting was very successful with just over 60 members attending, representing 75 MRC members. The board shared with members the recent progress with bondholders on the Hampton facility and more detail on fundamental matters notices we were preparing to send to members explaining the new process and what the MRC stalking horse bid was all about. After that meeting, the next 3 months were hectic. MRC started working closely with the receiver and the investment banker to get them up to speed on everything. We provided them with all the information on potential buyers we had already spoken to and all the files needed for the buy to create a buyer's data room. It was agreed upon that the facility would only be marketed to buyers who intend to restart the facility in the same or similar manner as before, consistent with the existing MRC agreements and permits. A questionnaire was created to distribute to potential buyers so that they could be vetted before bidding. A data room was up and going for potential buyers to review and start due diligence. Many tours at the Hampton facility started taking place, sometimes multiple tours with the same potential buyer. Mid-May was the deadline for bidders and questionnaires qualifications to be submitted. The screening was based on, but not limited to, bidders must have proof of cash on hand ready to close on or before June 30th, proof of additional finances available to them for facility upgrades and startup, no changes to the MRC current tip fee structure or pledge of MRC selling their land, present a high-level pro forma and operational plan, and of course, their technical and financial capability. Once bidder qualification forms were in, due diligence was conducted, and much back and forth took place with potential buyers. A full review was completed of all potential buyers, and it was decided by the receiver, investment banker, and MRC that no buyers were deemed qualified to participate in an auction process. The proposals from bidders either did not satisfy the financial or technical capabilities for the Hampton facility. As a result of having no qualified buyers, the auction was canceled. The next step was to move forward with MRC purchasing the facility. On August 10th, after the court's approval, MRC purchased the Hampton facility from the bondholders and created a new company, Municipal Waste Solutions, MWS, as the new owner and identity of the Hampton facility. MWS is an LLC that is currently owned and operated by the MRC. The purchase price for the facility was 1.5 million minus any credits or specific cost MRC acquired during the final sale process. MRC worked with the current lien holders on settlement terms and payment plans until the next financing round comes to fruition to pay off those debts. The progress we've made since ownership. After 2 long years of uncertainty, we are excited to take complete control and make timely decisions on MWS. We, the MRC and its members, are finally in the driver's seat. Under our ownership, we have accomplished more in the last 4 months toward reopening the facility than the bondholders did in 2 years. We have fully insured the facility and the equipment within it, which was no easy task for a facility of this magnitude. We conducted our own bid process in less than 4 weeks, soliciting potential partners for the majority ownership of MWS. We selected a potential partner, Revere Capital Advisor, and executed a term sheet with Revere in less than 6 weeks. The executed term sheet specifies that Revere will acquire the controlling interest in Municipal Waste Solutions LLC, with the MRC retaining a minority ownership. As the majority owner, Revere will supply the financial capital needed to reopen MWS, while the MRC's minority stake will provide it with a seat at the table. MRC will continue to own the land beneath the facility and receive lease payments. MRC will also receive a per ton fee for providing certain management services to the plant and Municipal Waste Solutions, which will help MRC recruit money spent during the closure. We've also accomplished receiving $400,000 in down payments for exclusivity rights that can be used towards carrying costs of MWS facility while working towards a closing. MRC was awarded just over $42,000 in grant funding for staffing and education. Worked with the current facility lien holders and settled on payment plans. Executed, submitted, filed a global transfer application for all DEP permits associated with the facility to have MWS name added and the former owner and managers removed. Hosting Governor Janet Mills and other distinguished guests in a tour of the Municipal Waste Solutions facility. This was an excellent opportunity to show the governor our commitment to the process and recycling of municipal solid waste for our region. Like I said earlier, we have come a long way in the last 4 months since the facility has been in MRC's control. If we had been driving the bus 2 years ago, I believe the facility would be up and operating again by now. But we are coming into a new year and we can't look back, we can only look ahead. Revere Capital just needs a little bit more time to complete their deal. They need the additional time to work with facility operators and project managers on details of financial and operating plan to implement a profit improvement program and biogas upgrade to restart the MSW facility and operate it profitably. Revere, along with their counsel and environmental consultant, has been working with the Maine DEP to ensure they understand the permit requirements and there is a clear path forward to meeting the conditions. These steps are essential before Revere can finalize its purchase of the majority share of Municipal Waste Solutions. Revere is not relying on any state or local tax incentives, loan guarantees, or credit enhancements. They need to ensure that they have all the boxes checked before completing their final financing for the facility upgrades and restart. Moving forward, in the first quarter of 2023, key agreements between Revere and the MRC and MWS will be executed. Financial closing for phase 1 of a partnership will take place. Meetings with key players for permits such as the town of Hamden, DEP, and Bangor Water will start taking place. The DEP meetings have already begun. An engineering report will be completed. MRC will start invoicing for management service and lease payments. We have previously said to our members, the successful in our endeavors is to reopen and restart the facility. The MRC's preferred option is to have a private sector partner to share the responsibility of owning and operating the facility. This reduces the need for the MRC to work with members to finance the facility and help secure an arrangement for the reopening and the operating of the facility that places the members' best interests first. But I want to remind members that part of our negotiations, we have always been able to work on our own financing if needed. Suppose the partnership does not come to fruition, which we have no reason to think it won't. But if so, MRC has been working in the background since the spring when we realized we might end up with this facility on our own financing to restart and hire a contractor to manage the facilities day to day. Much time and effort has been put into this. The board has created a subcommittee for seeking financing led by board members such as Bob Butler, a former commercial and international banker. Karen, Melissa, and Aaron also sit on this committee. A draft performer has been completed. Meetings and tours with operators have taken place and proposals have been provided. There have also been several meetings with the Maine Municipal Bonds Bank, the DEP Commissioner and Director, the Governor's Office, and many other state and federal agencies and financial institutions about possible funding source and backing the capital needed to restart the facility. Like I said before, this is a contingency plan, a backup only. We are encouraged by Revere's continued interest in this project and significant efforts to bring it to completion. And over the next several weeks, Revere expects to complete most of their due diligence and close on the first phase of the partnership. This far, we are pleased with the reporting and the expertise Revere has had on site reviewing the plant's equipment, technology, and operation. Revere intends to operate the plant as it was designed to work, which includes significant improvements and efficiencies to the operation. Working on contingency plans has always been a continuous effort of the MRC, and we will continue to do so until we absolutely know it is not needed. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
We really have been busy,
Especially Mike.
especially Mike, exactly.
It's been an incredible year and we really, Mike, thank you so much for everything that you've done. I'm gonna say this later, but it's just incredible the amount of effort and work that you've accomplished this year, just where you've brought us and where you've gotten us. It's great to have it in MRC's hands and for us to be able to control our future.
Thank you.
And I would like, I'm not sure you included this, did you mention the deposits?
Yes.
Oh, you did mention
Yes.
deposits, okay, yeah, so we're,
We're in good shape.
we're in good shape, we,
Good way to start the year.
it is a good way to start the year, and it puts us on good footing with our prospective partners. We'll be looking forward to hearing from them. And just as a reminder to our audience and the folks listening online, we will have comments at the end. If anybody has any questions for Mike or for our prospective partners, we'll be taking them at that time. So at this time, any other questions or comments from the board? All right, so Mike, what do we have up next?
So next, I would like to introduce our guest, who the MRC considers to be some of the best experts in the waste industry. Dennis St. Peter, to speak to us on his view of processing and recycling infrastructure. Dennis is a professional engineer and the president and CEO of Haley Ward, experienced in solid waste engineering in the state of Maine, and has supported the MRC for over 10 years now. Also, we have longtime consultant George Aronson, who will be talking about the MSW facility performance history. George is the principal and co-founder of Commonwealth Resource Management Corporation. George has over 35 years of professional experience as a consultant and project developer, and has been with the MRC as the lead consultant for most of that time. So Dennis, would you like to come up, and we'll start with Dennis?
Welcome board and members that are listening in. I think this is probably the first time I've been in front of you since the pandemic, I think. But, I know Mike has been busy with MRC related matters, but I've been really just kind of been available to him for questions that pop up, and more recently helping Revere with the permits. But Mike asked me to talk about, kind of the state of the infrastructure in Maine. Our company, before it was Haley Ward, it was CES, 40 years experience in the state of Maine. me personally, 30 years experience with solid waste projects across the whole state. From up to Loring Air Force Base down to Sago. So, what I thought I'd do was talk about some of the, key state laws that have really structured our infrastructure that we have. And the first one, I think everybody knows, is the hierarchy in the state of Maine. I'm not gonna go over all the citation, but they're on the slides. We have, as a state, been pushed quite hard by the state to use the hierarchy to, when we implement new projects, new solid waste projects. So you can see the element in the quotes there are that, the state plan for and implement integrated approach to solid waste management for solid waste generated in the state. This has really been a focus of ours at the MRC, working with all of you and the previous members of the board. It's been right along with the mission statement of the MRC. We're trying to do the best we can, and probably better than the rest of the state of Maine, and what this facility can do. But again, all of this has really structured our infrastructure across the state of Maine. We used to all have our own landfills. Each municipality had its own landfill. Those were required to close. There was a state cost sharing of 75% to push individual towns and cities to close their landfills. All that had an impact. Create a lot of transfer stations across the state. A lot of you have your own transfer stations, but areas that don't have their own transfer stations, like the city of Bangor, it's because there was a regional approach to solid waste management. So across the waste shed of the MRC, there's a lot of key transfer stations that are playing a key role in how we have structured our infrastructure. Next slide.
There we go.
Okay, same statute, but the emphasized text there, maximize waste diversion efforts by encouraging new and expanded uses of solid waste generated in the state as a resource. To me, that was one of the key things that led the MRC to choose the type of facility that you chose, to achieve diversion rates that no one else is achieving in the state of Maine. And a lot of us thought that was a very honorable thing to do. Next slide. These next two, we use quite extensively in the permitting application materials and several years ago when we started this process. That declaration of policy, the state recognized that you need economies of scale to make a difference in diversion from landfills. You need to have a certain waste amount to be able to afford some special technology. So that was right in the statute. We reminded the DEP along the way that was the case, and that's why the MRC was doing what they're doing. The next statute it's kind of the basic requirement that every municipality has in the state of Maine, that they are required to provide an option to its citizens for solid waste. It's kind of a basic requirement that all the municipalities have. And it kind of speaks to the regionalization, the membership that you have. And I'll revisit the membership piece, but I think that is one of the keys I see as to your success, is being able to stay together and be able to afford something more special than just landfill. Next slide. So touching on the regional approach success that you have all had, working with George and working with Mike, the board over the several years, working with back when Fiberite and CRM were still with us. All of this infrastructure was considered when we applied for the investors initially invested in this facility. So it's this whole structure of waste management has been considered, all of the underlying infrastructure, down to the transfer stations, down to the who's members. And to me, it's really a key success. You don't see these regional successes at this scale. And we're more rural part of the state than some of the more populated areas. So I think it's more of a key to what we need to do to succeed. Spoke to the state statute on the economies of scale. The original approach is necessary for this to be able to continue the operation of this plant. We need a certain amount of waste to make this economical. I spoke a bit about the infrastructure already, but the MRC and the investors of the plant invested quite a bit of money into the plant itself, as well as the road and the utilities needed to operate the plant. So I'd say all that infrastructure is in very good shape. The difficulty and if the membership started to dwindle and dissolve, I think it would be very difficult to put, based on my experience across the state, to put this back together. So I think my advice to you is to stick together as much as you can. And then I think the MRC is in a unique situation to continue to lead the state and achieving diversion rates that are really unheard of in the state. And I think you're in a very good spot with Revere to make that successful. Mike mentioned it briefly that we have been asked by Revere to help them with the permits, and we have had some meetings with the department already. I think those are successful so far. There's some unique, the timing of operation probably made me the most unique situation. When we secured the last permits previously, the contemplation was that they would continue operating once the permits were obtained. It's been not operating, so that was one of the keys to, I think, Revere or any new financer. So we've had some good successes with Revere and their legal counsel working directly with the department on that. So that's what I had. Anything else, Mike, that you were thinking that I might?
No, I think it was just good to kind of touch base and get your overview. I mean, there's so much happening behind the scenes with this thing, and it's just such a massive undertaking. So it's great to have you aboard. It's great to have you working and on it. And I'm just looking forward to moving forward with this.
Yeah.
So
I've been doing much the last couple of years, except getting your phone calls once in a while and providing what you need. But it's good to see things moving ahead.
super. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dennis.
Next we have George.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Next slide, please. Okay, and the slide says facility performance history, and the word is history because right now we are not in the place we want to be in some ways. We want to be maximizing waste diversion, diverting as much as we can from landfill into useful products and materials. But that's not where we are right now. We have a facility that suspended operation in May of 2020. We're bypassing. This is not a situation we want to be. This is a situation we want to fix. And I think everyone in this room agrees that we want to do better and we can do better. I think the good news is we've made progress out of the gridlock we were in a year ago towards moving better. And we understand everyone's impatience because we'd all like to get there faster than we can. And it is an uphill battle with a lot of challenges, but I just want to acknowledge all the folks around this table who are working to overcome those challenges, because if it were easy, it would be done, but it's not. And we got a lot of work to do. But I think when we do that, one of the things we need to recognize, and one of the reasons that people are so dedicated, is we did see the facility operate and we did see substantial progress. And we also saw it operate and be monitored and tested in a way that gave us instruction for what needed to be done to complete the job. And so I'm just going to talk to that. I could talk about this for hours, but I won't. But just to put it out there, the first MSW was accepted in April 2019, and there was a performance test from October 22nd to 28th of 2019 that Michael and I and others witnessed, counting loads in trucks, watching everything, looking at the data. There's nothing like a test administered by somebody other than the operator to get data and to figure out where we are. And we learned a lot about what the facility can do. We also learned about some things where the facility needed improvement. The can-dos are on the screen. We were hoping to process 400 tons a day for 3 days, and we beat that, 1279 tons in 3 days. We're hoping to show that over a 3-hour stretch, we could do 45 tons an hour, and we beat that. We had a 53 ton per hour stretch over 3 hours. We had hoped that we would beat by a lot more than we did, the 50% standard for diversion that's been reached by the DP. And yeah, if you look at the mass balance, it comes out to 54.1%. So technically it's a pass. I think at the time also the MRC board was hoping for more. And so it ended up being a conditional pass with requirements of what we call integral capabilities that we looked at every 3 months since then and saying, how are we making progress towards these goals? Because we want a much higher waste diversion number than 54% by the time we're done. That's the goal. In fact, you know, Dennis said maximize diversion. I think we all believe that. Other places you'll see the words irreducible minimum. The idea is to take that waste stream and squeeze everything we can out of it and bring back the use to commerce into society. That's the promise of the facility. We have much of the work done and there's just more work to do. We did sell the materials that were recovered. Had good luck with that. Even in down markets, the markets go up and down. They were up before, they're a little bit down recently, but materials are marketable. This facility produced marketable materials. We produce some quality pulp and briquettes. There are a number of reasons, which I'm not going to go into now, why at the time the pulp and briquette and the production process worked the way it did. One of the, I think, the successes of the test was to highlight some of the bottlenecks in the pulping process so that there would be an opportunity to come in and fix those. And similarly, we produced more biogas than anticipated. On the other hand, because the pulping process never truly got debottlenecked, the biogas production process, which is downstream, never fully reached its full capacity as well. So there's more work to be done there. And finally, at the time when there were not permits available to produce biomass that could be sold in the state of Maine, it had to be diverted as ADC in landfill. We did that. It wasn't the preferred outcome, but it was better some of the other outcomes. What we now know, and I think Dennis mentioned it, and Michael mentioned it as well, we seem to have a path working with DEP and with now a better understanding of the facility itself, including some of the results of the performance test and subsequent operation of how to go down that path so that we can actually produce a quality pulp and get our diversion numbers up to where we'd like to be. So, you know, I think, no, right now, we're not where we want to be, but we can see a path to get to where we want to be. And I think that's what keeps us moving forward with this project. Next slide, please. Okay, I just thought that it would be helpful because sometimes we forget in all the abstraction of receivership and this and that and term sheet and financing and technical capability that at the end of this path, there's a facility to produce real materials to go back into commerce in useful and safe ways. That if you look to the left, you see the plastics that were, I think those are HDPE, that were going up into bales and being sold at the time of production. We see some cardboard bales that came out of the waste stream. To the right, the gas was still being flared. It had not yet got to the point where, and it still is not, that's another task to be done to upgrade that gas, the pipeline quality, and use it to displace fossil gas. And to the lower right, you see briquettes that were produced that met the specs. There are some issues with that process and the permitting of it, but there's still potential customers for this briquettes that would offset fossil fuels as well. In the center bottom, you see it's actually some pretty nice looking pulp, and they're also interested purchasers for this product there when we get there. Again, we know that there's work to be done in terms of what we've learned during the performance test. And in fact, when you look at the history, the early part of 2020 was about taking the results of the performance test, figuring out what improvements needed to be done,
trying to raise money for that. Previous ownership was not successful in doing that, but we have developed a plan to go down that path and finish the job that was started, and that's what we're hoping that Revere can do, kind of working with the MRC going forward. And finally, the bottom left was kind of a novelty at the time. Turns out that after July 4th and after Memorial Day, it turns out that people throw a lot of flags into the trash, and when you have a facility that can take a lot of things out of it, a lot of the workers felt strongly it was the right thing to do to pull flags out and give them a proper burial. So, and one thing is kind of one of those things that made us proud that this is another unforeseen thing we can do, but it also illustrates there are a lot of capabilities, a lot of possibilities to do more with flexible facility of the type that we have. That it's not only the things that have been recycled, but as the waste stream changes, as we find new wastes and new ways to bring materials back into commerce, we can find new ways to tweak the facility to find a little differently, get that diversion rate up, and find more ways to divert waste. That's the real promise of the facility. That's why we're here. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, George. Thank you. One of the reasons I asked George to speak and remind us of the performance test is, I think in June of 2020, the first headline was the shuttered Hamden plant, and that's stuck with this plant for the last 2 years. So it was important to remember it did work. And the performance test, the one thing that it did do is it identified those bottlenecks, and those bottlenecks actually had engineer reports done on them and engineers come in. And so the one benefit that we've had moving forward now that we've had the plant is we've been able to provide that information in the data room. And then folks like Revere Capital have not only looked at that, but they brought in experts on top of those experts to even tweak those, one better. So I think it's important to remind people, because there has been some pretty aggressive headlines out there over the last couple of years, and they usually start with the shuttered plant, and the plant did work. So thanks for reviewing that, Mr. George. So now, with no further ado, up next, I'd like to invite the gentleman from Revere Capital to come up and tell us all about the wonderful things going on. So.
We get to sit this time versus.
Yeah. I can go get the podium if you want. So why don't you start with just a quick introduction of yourself?
So good afternoon, I'm Pat Dale. I'm a senior managing director with Revere Capital Advisors. I'm here with my colleague Nigel Eckern. We're delighted to be here. Revere is a New York-based investment firm. We're leading a consortium of investors, a Revere-led consortium that we hope will result in the acquisition and restart of the Hamden facility. Revere is a New York-based investment firm. We have a pool of our own capital that we manage. We have an investor network that we partner with, and as well as we have a network of investors both on the acquisition side and then what I call the institutional infrastructure side that we are confident will provide capital to get this plant restarted. We're a group of experienced financial professionals that have done business all over the world. We try to use our industry contacts, our access to capital to focus on key industries that are important to us. The renewable energy sector, where I spent a fair amount of time, as well as the sustainable sector, which is a sort of euphemism, all inclusive for recycling, waste management, etc., are two areas of our focus. And we very much enjoyed our partnership with the MRC, and it is a partnership because we try to employ our capital and our experience in a situation where we can create value. And while we've looked at this from a lot of different perspectives, we're quite confident that the Revere-led consortium will be able to execute an acquisition of the facility. And then while they're acquiring the facility in partnership with the MRC, get the engineering, complete the engineering and regulatory work to sustain a permanent plan of recapitalization and a restart of the facility. This is a very important, and we appreciate, excuse me, how important a facility that this is for Maine, but we think it's an important facility nationally, because the one common theme is we're going to run out of landfills, and the ability to divert waste into usable products is critical. Like all of these complex problems, they're not going to be solved with one plan or one situation, but we think this is a very important start. If anyone, wants to look around and see around both the financial and operating world, where this impact has been quite significant. The landfill gas area is one of those areas right now where lots of capital is being diverted there. Natural gas is one of the few fossil fuels that, may be a path to transition to a renewable energy economy, and the ability to not have to take it out of the ground and being able to reclaim it out of the landfills and the processes that occur there, I think is very important, not only for the environment, but the ability to divert and sustain products. So we're cautiously optimistic. I have to say that as an investor, but we're quite confident with our MRC partnership that we have a very detailed plan to acquire for the facility, continue the ongoing work with Haley Ward to finalize the transition of the license as well as the conditions to operation, as well as finalize the permanent plan of recapitalization with our engineering partners to have a facility up and running as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so what I'd like to add is it's nice to be back. Last time we were here was back in July when we sort of kicked off this process. I want to add that our presentation will be as scripted, as well scripted as Michael's or with the slides of George's. But we're really here to update you to where we are on the process. And Michael did really very good comprehensive job in terms of next steps. We have extended the period of exclusivity. We've provided now a total of 400,000 in sort of earnest money or deposits towards the transaction. The key steps in the next phase of the transaction are we are working very closely with Dennis and Haley Ward and our counsel Bernstein Shore to work with the DEP in terms of changing conditions in the permit, the beneficial use permit that was issued, to gain assurance that we can satisfy those conditions so that we'll have a fully operable permit that both we're looking for, our financing partners are looking for. That's really the linchpin to get the plant restarted. And as everyone knows, that was really one of the critical failures last time, was an inability to sell the pulp that was being produced. So that's something that has gotten our keen focus. The second area of focus is an engineering assessment of the plant. So we were in the plant again yesterday with Mike, with a team of engineers, particularly focused on the pulping process. So we are continuing our work in an engineering assessment of the plant in terms of how best to restart the plant and what that process should look like on an ongoing basis. So we're confident that we are going to get clarity around the DEP process, and we have received multiple proposals from engineering firms to undertake that engineering work to assess and provide us with a full comprehensive report in terms of the restart and also the restart of the existing operation, and then the upgrade of the biogas facility so that we can produce renewable natural gas. So a full assessment of that in terms of cost, schedule, timing, and feasibility. And that's really the document that we're looking to produce. So that leaves us in the process is taking us longer than we'd hoped. I think everyone agrees with that, but probably not longer than we anticipated. We sort of knew the steps that needed to be accomplished, and it's just taken us a bit longer than we expected. So we have our head down. We continue to work. There's been tremendous transparency in terms of this process with Michael, with George. So it's been very helpful. We sort of feel we have a very good handle on it and are making good progress. And it's just taken us a bit longer than we had anticipated.
The only thing I'd add to that as well is the Revere-led consortium of investors are an experienced group, and we do things thoroughly. And I can't say enough about the MRC. And if I miss someone, I apologize, but it's Mike, Cameron, George is the advisor, the other board members, Bob Butler. They really have exercised an extra level of fiduciary responsibility on behalf of their members. It's a little difficult for us at times because they're tough negotiators, but they really have looked out for the members' interests. And I just want to highlight that the technology that's in there is existing processes. The MRF, the materials recovery facilities is an existing technology that works. We've been in contact with CP Manufacturing. We're quite happy with that interaction. The pulper is an existing pulping facility. And the gas complex is existing technology. So while we do talk about engineering and the necessary steps from a fiduciary perspective, but we all have to adhere to, this is not some pie in the sky technology. It's really just a refinement of how things were put together in the initial realm, and we're quite confident that this facility will get reopened. And I think people will be delighted nationally when they see the level of incoming trash stream that's being diverted into useful products. And I think George makes a very good point where while the commodity markets, whether it be pulp or gas, will fluctuate, we think the economics in the long term will be quite sound, and that people will want to replicate facilities such as this around the country. Thank you, gentlemen.
Any questions from the board over here? I have one actually, so for the benefit of our members and folks in the audience, are you in a position to be more specific about when you might be able to name who the engineering firm is that you're going to use and when they might start their work?
Yes, but not publicly. The non-disclosure agreements with the engineering firm, we're happy to share them with the board and discuss them, but not publicly.
So
For
when
this
will
site.
that information be available for the public?
Next month. Yeah,
So once they get underway, so you're anticipating having them
Yes,
engaged? next
when they're
month?
engaged and working, yeah, that's when we'll disclose it to the board, and then we'll make sure that it's, once they're engaged and they're ongoing, then we'll feel comfortable agreeing with them to disclose it publicly. Yeah.
And are you still anticipating that process being about 45 days?
Yeah, 45 to 60 days, yeah, to have that report created. Yeah.
Any other questions, Bob?
Spark my mind here. You spoke at a fair degree about your investor group and your need to do your homework, to cross your T's and dot your I's, to ensure that what you were bringing to them was sufficient information-wise to allow them to make a hedged and intelligent decision about putting money into this project. Am I representing your thoughts accurately there? I don't sense there's pushback from them as much as there is a desire to understand more so that they understand the risk they are taking.
Bob, that's exactly right, and we have healthy dialogue with them. We know their conditions, right? I mean, you're a former lender, you understand. We're all in agreement. We need an engineering report that sort of validates this whole process to expend the capital. We need clarity around the status of the permit, the beneficial use permit. Is that, it has conditions that need to be satisfied in order for us to be able to manufacture and sell the pulp in Maine. Are we able to satisfy those conditions? So first step, the conditions needed to be minor modifications of the conditions. So then we're comfortable that we can meet those conditions. But we actually have to meet the conditions, right? So the Haley board is helping us with that process of, we'll be at a position sometime, 60, 90 days from now where we have all the conditions to our satisfaction completed with the DEP. We have an engineering report that substantiates what we're undertaking. And then we'll be in a position where we'll be able to start drawing the capital and spending the capital. Like that's the process. So you're absolutely spot on. It was like, okay, if and when we have an engineering report that validates everything that we're planning to do, perfect, check the box. Okay, we're changing the conditions in the DEP permit. When those conditions have been changed and now we know we can satisfy them, then we have to actually go about satisfying them, right? And then we can move forward on the basis that we have a operable permit and we can sell the pulp.
And the only thing I'd add to that, Bob, you're an experienced institutional investor. I know some of the times the hedging language is can be frustrating, but we're also bound by federal securities laws in terms of what we can say and how we can say it. And it's for the public's benefit in terms of, we will do this or what have you. It's a very fine line. So we try to be as transparent as possible, but it's a fiduciary process that benefits everyone. And this is a bad analogy, but when I first got into business, someone said to me, it's, use the home purchase as the fundamental example of finance. You have a willing seller and a willing buyer, and maybe you want to do a renovation and you need a permit and you've arranged a mortgage and you've got the capital up there, but all the paperwork can't be executed to all the pieces of there, and there might be language missing in a permit. There might be language missing. Someone wasn't able to verify the title. Everybody, I think, has experienced some level of this. And so that's the type of situation we're in. If we didn't fundamentally believe, that this project made sense. And again, this project underwent some significant scrutiny on the original financing as well, which is a public document, which everybody's looked at. So we really ought to try for everybody's benefit to make sure that we can get this done as quickly as possible. And that's why there are a lot of parallel paths going on at the same time. And a lot of the engineering firms and others are interested in this because when, hopefully when this project's up and running, it's going to be an important template for the rest of the country.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, Pat and Nigel both. We're really glad to have the process moving forward. We're looking forward to lots of activity in January after holidays and looking forward to the close. So, and most importantly, to getting that plant up and running.
Yeah, great.
So hopeful for waste in the plant in 2023.
Yes.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
you. Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dana.
Yep. We see you.
Thank you, Dan.
Just to check and see how you're doing.
Dana has a town meeting he has to get.
So, busy guy, huh?
Yeah.
We're from one volunteer engagement to the next.
Yeah.
So now we have an opportunity for reflections from the board. If anybody has anything they'd like to share, I might just start off, a little bit about MRC and the value of MRC and the role that MRC plays for our members. I think Dennis did a nice job of talking about the importance of the economies of scale and the value of all these communities working together to be able to collectively deal with this, fundamental issue that everybody has to deal with. It is very costly and challenging for any community individually to deal with, which is waste. So, hopefully most people have heard the origin story of MRC back, out of the birth of the problems of PERC's trials and tribulations when it was first opened for operations in the late 80s. It had troubles. The communities came together to help solve that problem. And they did it fantastically and went on for very successful, 30-year partnership with the PERC private partners. And, we're looking to remake that for the 21st century with the facility in Hampden and looking at the waste stream as it is today and the potential that it has. And I think George did a great job of talking about the opportunities that are there and the value that the flexibility of the facility can provide. And I just think it's important to remember that MRC is here for its members. We're working every day to support members and looking out for their best interests. And I think that too bad Dana's left, but he really had a good point there. It would be great if every community could have an opportunity to participate in this process, to really see what happens here in these meetings and the effort that's put forward and the good faith and goodwill that everybody has to try to do the absolute best we can. We're working in less than ideal conditions, very complex, difficult situations and challenging topics. And we've got, permit issues and financing issues and all sorts of issues that we're working to manage and consider and deal with on behalf of our members. I remember back, in 2009, which is when I first sort of started thinking about the MRC. And as finance director, I would see invoices come across my desk from the MRC, but I didn't really think about it. I just passed them on to our, director of environmental services until the survey came that said, as an MRC member, are you interested? Would you be willing to buy the PERC facility? Whoop, my ears perked up. I was like, what's this all about? Who's this MRC? What are they trying to get us to do? Who are these people? What is this group? And so I started attending meetings, and boy, was it an eye opener. I was thinking MRC was them. And I realized by attending the meetings that MRC was us, we are MRC. And that was the beginnings of my participation in MRC and, wanting to help, wanting to do our part, knowing that I'm helping my community brewer, but also helping all the other members. If I work together, we can make the best decisions possible. So I just really, I encourage everybody to participate. We're so glad to have people attending the meetings, glad to have folks interested in sitting on the board. We're open to listening to what folks have to say and helping us, solve this challenge that we have in front of us. So, Tony?
Hey, my name is Tony Smith. I'm the vice president of the MRC and former director of public works for the town of Mount Desert, which ended October 31st. Retired and now working part-time for them. I remember a few years ago, the then board and boards put a lot of miles in, visiting as many, if not all, of the MRC towns. After the contracts with the PERC facility expired, the cost of purchasing PERC's electricity came to earth. To describe the fiberite facility to the members. And most of those meetings were very civil. We were welcome. A handful were hostile. But I didn't get on the board for attaboys. You don't go into civil engineering for the attaboys a lot. Dennis and his group, just because I used to work there years ago, have done a great job with Revere and with us over the years. But I still believe in this facility. I was at the startup for the testing, aside from a boat hull and 2 moose hides that came through. The testing, performance testing went quite well. And again, I'm still a believer. I've seen it in action. I've seen the biogas being burned off. So I'm gung ho for it. And now that I'm retired, I plan on putting more work into things.
Glad to hear that.
I knew you would be.
Anybody else have any other thoughts?
Well, Mike asked me to talk about from the town management perspective. And I'm not really great at going off the cuff, so I've kind of prepared something that I wanted to read. I've been an active member of Municipal Review Committee since the beginning of my town management career, which started in 2005. The reason for my activism and interest was that solid waste was and still is one of my largest budget items. As a town manager, it is my responsibility to know what contributes to this large appropriation. I became a board member in 2021, which has increased my desire to attempt to understand not only municipal solid waste management in my region, but statewide as well. Maine law assigns a responsibility for the management of solid waste to each municipality. Currently, there are 3 waste to energy facilities and 9 landfills except Maine municipal solid waste. While I believe that most municipalities want to do not only right by their citizens, they wish to do right by the environment. The challenge that the state of Maine faces is a strong desire to avoid landfilling, declining landfill space, and the high disposal cost. Maine is not meeting and has not met the municipal solid waste reduction and recycling goals. The value of recycling commodities has declined so greatly that it is much more cost effective to dispose of these waste rather than recycle it. Many municipalities have actually saved money by cutting recycling programs, creating a situation in which Maine is unlikely to ever meet its recycling goals. Typically, residents of Maine, town and cities have the mindset of out of sight, out of mind. They follow their respective municipalities' guidelines for disposal, such as transfer station drop-off, or curbside pickup. It is gone from their home, it's gone from their property, so therefore it's out of sight and out of mind. Residents who do demand recycling are often surprised that their efforts are actually pointless, as their recycled item is typically landfilled or incinerated. This is due either to recycling contamination or municipal budget concerns. While it may be appropriate for Maine residents to have that mindset, it is not appropriate for municipal and state leaders to follow that course. It is our responsibility and state responsibility to know where solid waste and recycling is going. It has surprised me over my tenure to learn that many municipal and state leaders do not know where Maine solid waste is going. There are municipal leaders who municipalities can contract with one of the 3 trash to waste facilities, and they do believe that their solid waste is fully incinerated, when in fact those facilities frequently are not running to capability or perhaps not running at all. The solid waste generated in those municipalities is in fact landfilled. State leaders do acknowledge the need for effective and responsible solid waste disposal, but do not seem to understand the emerging issues, perhaps because it is not yet an emergency. While Maine residents can afford the ability to reason with out of sight, out of mind, Maine leaders cannot. I urge all to investigate their respective municipalities' solid waste disposal. A simple Google search of Maine state-owned landfill, then clicking on Juniper Ridge, will bring you to information that provides Juniper Ridge's monthly reports. A quick review of these reports and the word bypass will bring some insight to my comments. As a member of the MRC, we know our bypass dates and amounts. This is mostly due to the specific permitting required of the Hampden facility. We as members recognize the need for effective solid waste management and are committed to continuing membership agreements and support for the reopening of the Hampden facility. I hope as members we can educate our state leaders in our respective regions and ask for assistance in the reopening and join in the innovation of solid waste processing. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. It's great.
Just real quick, I used to do the state planning office recycling reports for the state then. For the DEP after that. And our town, you have people that will recycle and some that won't. Our recycling rate was 11 to 12%. And seeing the numbers coming out of Fiberite or the coastal when it was in operation, very encouraging. And we went with the 1 bin all in. Because of the coastal resources pulling recyclables out remarkable. They closed, we re-upped our recycling center in January. Those recyclables are hauled to an entity here in Maine, here in the area. And the tip fee went from $75 to $150 a ton, to $165 a ton, to $225 a ton in 11 months. The only way you know it's going up is when you read it on the invoice. The sooner this plant is online, the better. In my opinion. And as Fred and I used to say, we welcome you.
Yeah.
You mentioned recycling being contaminated. I tell the story repeatedly, but our cardboard recycling, which should be the easiest recycling you have, is repeatedly contaminated with rotten food. And the time we went around the corner and the gentleman was trying to stuff a flat screen TV through the slot because he wanted it to be recycled. This is what we deal with in terms of separating out recycling and trying to actually find a market for it. That's very difficult. Make a great point.
Well, Bob,
Can I say something?
absolutely.
I'm gonna give a pep talk.
Oh, great. Cheers up.
As Mike pointed out, it was the bondholders of the former Coastal Resources of Maine that delayed the process of ownership change in the Hampton plant by more than 2 years. The bondholders took far too long finally to realize that the offer from a third party based in Pennsylvania to make them whole was too good to be true. Since MRC became the owner of the plant, this board has moved quickly to bring the plant back to operation. And you heard Mike talk about what he has done. We've supported him, but what he's done to get this thing going, and just since August, it's amazing. And a major reason the MRC has been able to accomplish this important work has been the willingness of its membership to stay together. This MRC board is grateful that MRC's members have not given up and continue to give the MRC board their votes of confidence. Whether discussing the sale of the plant to interested investors or making its own efforts to arrange the financing that allows the MRC to operate the plant as a sole owner, member support is essential. The cash flow the MRC generates from committed membership fees is one of the key MRC cash assets that makes the Hamden plant potentially attractive to investors, bankers, and financiers. Members' commitments to abide by the respective waste supply agreements underpin the Hamden plant's perceived bankable value, which investors in the MRC require to raise the funding needed to improve and reopen the plant. We remain hopeful that the proposed sale of a 95% interest in the plant to Revere will close. We know that if MRC's members do not stay together, the deal with Revere or with any other third party or an arrangement the MRC makes on its own to keep ownership of the plant will not be possible. MRC's membership holds out to any prospective owner a substantial cash flow that makes financing and equity participation practical. The cash flow guarantees the servicing of debt and returns to investors. I've been privileged to be part of an archaeological dig on my property in Waldboro. We've discovered discarded pottery, bones, farm implements, and articles of clothing that date back to the 1740s. This encounter with history, without a doubt, without a scintilla of reservation, underscores something we've all known. Not only have humans always created garbage, they always will. That's a fact all of us can literally bank on. We all know with certainty that MRC's members will forever and a day have waste to send to the Hamden facility. That waste and the cash flows it generates in tip fees represent the guarantee that the Hamden plant will be needed for as long as MRC's member communities stick together. So thank you to all of MRC's members for staying the course. Thank you to all the members for taking an interest in the Hamden plant and its future, for giving voice to their concerns, for putting forth their ideas, and for not giving up. There is safety and strength in numbers. Let's please hold that thought as we enter the new year to meet the challenges ahead.
Yes. And I do like the fact that, you know, what the plant offers as well, you know, people always have waste that they want to get rid of, but what the plan offers is an opportunity for everybody that waste to be discarded, for that to be recycled.
Yeah.
Whether or not their community was able to offer recycling before or will be able to in the future, everybody's going to have a chance to have waste diverted, the waste that they present. So I think that that is, to me, one of the best benefits. You know, they talk about helping disadvantaged communities or environmental justice. I mean, we're offering it. This is providing it equally across the board to all of our members. And, you know, what I also like to look forward to is all the things that we have and the ideas we have for the future once the plant's up and operating, and the value that we feel like MRC can offer to its members above and beyond what this plant can provide once we get the plant up and running and the kinks worked out and the property improvement plan done, and that's all taken care of. I mean, you know, I think there's a lot of needs out there from our communities and things that we can offer with the economies of scale. I mean, we've been talking about bulky waste for a long time. I know everybody has that as an issue, would like help dealing with that. You know, whether it's the mattresses or the tires or the furniture or whatever. You know, we'll be playing a role in Augusta with all the solid waste legislation that's coming out and other environmentally waste related issues. You know, they're talking about the extended producer responsibility legislation and implementation of that. MRC is providing its members a seat at the table. You met with 4 hours for DEP on that one-on-one, which is great. We want to make sure that the Camden facilities recycling is considered recycling. So I think there's a lot that MRC offers its members. All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on a point, and both you mentioned it and Tony mentioned it. There's a lot to be gained from not only those who are passionate about recycling. I mean, we have 200,000 residents in the state. We represent 200,000 residents in the state and over 100,000 tons of trash every year. And some of those people, like Tony mentioned, really are passionate about recycling. They really want to see recycling in each of our communities. But there's a lot that don't care. And what you say, you were coming up with a number 11%.
That was our recycling
Yeah.
rate.
Yeah, that was your
Yes.
diversion rate. And, that's because there's a lot of people that just don't care. As Melissa said, they just want it gone. That's all they care about. And, we are offering something here that meets the needs and serves both those constituents. We have the ability to pull, regardless of whether you care about recycling or not, we're offering the ability to pull all this recyclable material out, divert that from the waste stream. It's really huge. For more than 30 years, Maine has had a goal of 50% recycling. I think it was 1989 that they stated that goal, and we haven't reached it yet. It's really kind of sad that we haven't come up with a way to reach it. And Pat and Nigel talked about, this isn't new technology. This is putting existing technologies together to really make something happen. And to be able to divert 60, 70 or more, I think we've thrown out an 80% number as being realistic. That's huge. And what is that going to do for not just the residents of our communities that we represent, but the whole state? This is really something that's going to get us there. And we are so close now. As you said, we need that support. We need to stick together. This is the time when we're getting ready to close the deal. So this is important to our residents, but it's also important to the rest of the state. So we ask for that support.
I think it's important to add that just everybody realizes too, is when we talk about the 11%, the 10%, the 15%, those percentages are the truck crossing the scale going to the recycling center. So that's your weight ticket of the truck going in. Now the contaminants get pulled out. Nobody knows what that real number is. You go to any recycling center and it's full of roll-offs out back, and that is pulling out that saturated cardboard, or that is pulling out that pizza box with the pizza still in it. So your 11% is going in, but nobody knows what came out of that bulk load and what that real number is. Where a facility like ours, it's all picked up. It's all right there in the same facility.
Right, I'm pretty sure what were the numbers when the coaster was operating, was it like 12 to 15% was coming out? It's
12,
clean
15%
recyclable.
was the commodities,
Right.
35 to 40%.
And then the
all,
dirty,
yeah.
dirty pizza boxes were going to the back end. And going
Yes,
through
that's
all
the,
of it.
that's the thing, is they would cherry pick the commodities, but the contaminated material that you'd mostly see at a recycling center going in that roll-off out back to go to landfill or wherever, that is now going to the wet end and becoming a fiber. Just important.
All right. What do we say about going for some public comments? Do we have anybody out there? that's
I
put
think
in-
the thank yous are first, and then we can public comment.
Okay, you can thank
I mean, I
everybody.
could do real quick, off the board. So we just want to take a moment where it's our annual to thank, especially thank the members. I'm in contact with a lot of the members and thank you for your patience and, for all your questions. Governor's Mills office, Senator Collins' office, a special thank you to the host community, the town of Hamden, the team at DEP that we've been dealing with, Waste Management, where we, have a contract. PERC, thank you, Hank, for helping us out through these times. Former creditors of the CRM, our consultants and vendors, Commonwealth Resource Management, Eaton Peabody, Haley Ward, The MMA, they were very crucial in helping us get the insurance for this facility. And everyone who has supported us and assisted us. But I especially want to thank the board. This has been crazy times, a lot of late days. I pulled many of you off of vacations to sign something or to get a little guidance. I've had to call many of you in the evening hours or on the weekends. And I really appreciate how you've made yourselves available and you responded and gotten things done in a timely fashion. So we can get it back to whatever we happen to be dealing with at that time to keep things moving. So I especially want to thank you. So thank you.
Well, right back at you, Mike. You hold it all together, you keep all the balls in the air, and we don't really know how you do it because you're the one that's working like 28 hours a day, so. I don't know how you do it, and we're so grateful for everything.
I do it with George's help.
And I would like to reiterate a special thank you to Kirk. I mean, I know at one point we were across the table and, but we've had a very constructive relationship with you and we really appreciate, the collaboration and look forward to working together in the future with you as well. So,
Without Perk, this would all be going away.
yeah, exactly. Thank you. All right, so now on to public comment. Maybe we can start. Is there anybody that in Q&A or
We
they have
have,
raised a hand that wants?
well, Ella did a nice thank you to Bob for his remarks. So
Oh, nice.
just pass that
Great.
along.
Okay.
I know I've seen that.
John.
And we've had Jackie Elliott raise her hand, so
Okay.
I'll allow her to talk.
Sure,
Yeah.
sounds great.
We'll get you.
And if you could just identify who you are and what you're where you're from or who you represent.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I'm Jackie Elliott. I live in Waterboro, Maine. And I am a member of Don't Waste Maine, a citizens action group that focuses on waste management. I first want to commend the MRC folks for what they have accomplished. I have had the quote unquote privilege of serving on a board like this in the past, and I know how much work is involved and the complexity of the issues. So I appreciate what you've done, and I'm particularly encouraged by the fact that you've been able to bring so much of the operation under local control. So vital to anything meaningful coming out of efforts like this. And I can appreciate as well and encourage the fact that you see the value in staying together, working together. Obviously, you've had a relationship of communities going on for a long time here. And that's such an important factor when you're looking at dealing with waste management. So I would encourage you as well to keep that relationship intact and find ways forward that you can make it even more effective. As has been noted, economies of scale is a huge factor into any facet of these considerations around waste management. I share your concerns about the lack of actual recycling and the dismal figures that we are presented with in our efforts. I will raise a question that I've raised consistently around the purported technology involved here and the fact that a lot of what is being presented as a possibility is not really functioning anywhere in the world at scale. And I just see that as perhaps a problematic goal up front when you're choosing what to do with your waste, because as you have the history to attest to, that has been problematic, and you are where you are because that technology did not do what it was supposed to do. This is an arena I've been involved in for a long time. A lot of these technologies, though they look like they deal with the problem, actually end up creating more problems. and in many instances, more toxic problems. And that is a particular concern for me. My encouragement would be where you are now the proud owners of the facility as well as the property, and you do have equipment in that facility that could be utilized in ways that are proven to work. You have the digester. If you were to remove organic waste from the waste stream at the front end, that would divert and reduce by approximately a third. And digestion or composting is a proven method of accommodating this particular waste stream. Increased value can be reclaimed when recycling items are source separated, because there's not a lot within the waste stream relatively, particularly around plastics, that it can result in a high value product. A lot of it just ends up being put into some product that ends up being used as fuel, which is fraught with problems. So with all that being said, I wish the MRC well. I wish the towns well in this effort going forward. I just would like to see this be a real opportunity to perhaps consider what you utilize for technology and processes going forward to get to the goals that you want, which are admirable: reduction, diversion, recycling. That's all good stuff. But you might want to consider if there might not be some other ways to get there. And I put out the idea of zero waste goals, which are gaining a lot of consideration and implementation around the world. There are things that work. And one of the really great side benefits of these kinds of efforts is they keep the economic value and growth local, keep the dollars local. And it keeps the power in the situation in the hands of the local people. And you have experienced the value of getting yourselves there. And my encouragement would be to just continue moving in that direction and bring as much under your control as you possibly can, because that is where you are going to gain the value for your communities. And I feel that would be a real incentive for the towns to remain. And perhaps you could even gain some membership. And just generally speaking, because this is an area where I am totally marinated and saturated, this idea of the technology that you are being presented with, the only way that these technologies are really going to be successful for the investors is to increase the amounts of waste that they process. So it's conceivable that the MRC and their good intentions would become the vehicle whereby Maine, as well as particularly Hamden, because they are the host of this facility, are subjected to importation of increasing amounts of waste to be quote unquote processed. I just throw that out there. I hope you will consider it. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. And I commend you in your efforts and I wish you well. And I know how hard the work is. So thank you for being willing to step up and participate.
Thank you, Jackie, for your comments. I would like to remind folks that since her last comment was about increasing waste amounts and importation of waste, that our contracts have a strict prohibition against the importation of waste. And one of the things that we were very excited about with this facility was that it was right-sized for our region and for the waste that's produced in our region currently, and we have no designs on anybody wanting to increase the amount of waste they're producing. And we're fully supportive of our communities in any steps they want to take to decrease the waste that they're sending. We are confident that there's more than enough waste that this facility can handle. So
And there's still tons of waste going to landfills. That's not even contracted.
There you go.
I foresee that's the waste that we're focused on, or our investors will be focused on this.
keeping waste out of landfills.
Is Jackie still on?
Yeah, she's still listening.
Jackie, did you say you're from Waldeboro?
No, I am from Waterboro.
Oh, Walterboro, thank you,
Yes.
sorry.
Our permits prohibit the importation of solid waste. We asked for that to be written into those.
I'm glad that's there. I would just suggest you watch that provision carefully.
Yes, you betcha. But thank you very
Thank
much
you,
for your
Jackie.
thoughtful comments. We do appreciate that.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Anybody else from online? No? Folks in the audience?
John.
Hi. If you could speak up so our folks online can hear you.
Name's John Banks. And as a tribal member of the Penobscot Nation, my first question is, why would anybody throw away 2 moose hides?
We didn't make a great attempt to track those.
It can also be interpreted to a challenge to your statement about man always throwing away or always making garbage. That may not be true.
Based on my amateur's research, it definitely is true.
Well, you only went back to what?
1740.
1740. That's reason my.
And the boat.
My real question or comment is, now that the towns have moved through MRC to take ownership of the plant, which I think is a great step in the right direction. I would like to see more opportunities for public input to the process. Who is MRC? MRC is 115 municipalities. Who are the municipalities, the members? They're me, taxpayer from Orono, very much concerned about the environment and where our trash goes. So I now have even more of a vested interest in the future of this plant, as do every other taxpaying residents of 150 municipalities. And I've been, following the process fairly closely, and most of your meetings have been held in executive session. And I've been a bureaucrat for 40 years. I understand NDAs and the confidentiality agreements, and why they're required. But I think we're moving in a new direction now. It's almost like public ownership. Quite, it's moving in that direction. So I would like to see, like for the board here, actually to consider a bylaws change to allow for a couple of at-large community members on the board here that may not be directly connected to an elected official or being staff. I just think, given the history of this facility, I think it's really important to pay a little bit more attention to your public relations internally in the towns. I'd really like to see more opportunities for public to be more involved, since we do have more of a statement. Thank you.
I think that's great. Thank you
Thank you,
very much.
John.
And I heartily agree with that. Yes.
I sit over there where Dennis was.
Sure. The meeting's scheduled to end at 5.
No, I won't get too comfortable. George, you can kick me if I'm overstaying my welcome.
What do you think of it?
My name's Ed Spencer. I live in West Old Town. Old Town is not an MRC member. I'm also co-chair of Jackie mentioned Don't Waste Maine, but I think I'm speaking more on my own behalf, from my own perspective. And one thing I want to say is, things change over time. You know, we've seen like, we're almost 5 years since the, let's call it, divorce between Perk and the MRC, and I think it's great, by the way, that you can, you know, still communicate and help each other out. I'm glad George brought up the test results. I spent quite a bit of time finding my notes and finding those results. And I'm sure what he says is true, that this process can be fine-tuned and improved on. But I would just say that this idea of landfill cover as in any way a diversion, it's not. And we know that that's common sense. And that could change in statute as well. The other thing that's changing is 4.5, 5 years ago, very few of us knew what PFAS were. You know, if you're using a lot of water to wash garbage with, this could be problematic. So that's a couple of things, and I should say I really applaud you board members for volunteering. I've been a volunteer on the waste front since 2003, and it's hard, and at times, you know, you get criticized. I remember when I started out, I was going up against the state of Maine, Georgia Pacific Corporation, paper mill unions, you know, when they brought the state landfill to West Old Town. Now, one interesting thing I just thought sitting here is, you know, George pointed out that you're in bypass and that's got to change. So let's work together on that however we can. And when the state was negotiating to take ownership of Juniper Ridge, there was two things repeated to the public. And one was there would be no out-of-state waste. That's not a concern of ours here, but just to point out that promises are kind of made to be broken. The other one was that there would be no MSW going to it. And where that came from was from the MRC. The MRC brought that up because it didn't want the competition and didn't want that material in it, because running an MSW landfill is more difficult. Now, every morning, I'm a mile and 3/4 from the landfill, about 7 miles from here, and I see these birds migrating. It's in groups of half a dozen, 10, 50, 60, and they're all heading to the northeast. And they're going to get their feed off organics that have been taken to the landfill. You know, there's even been eagles seen up there. And I tried counting them. I lost track of like 250. Now, I don't know if I'm just on the flyaway or if that's all points of the compass, but it's a huge problem. Talk about vectors, right? So I think we got to end bypass. We got to get the organics out. Now, things change. The idea of landfill cover being accepted as recycling under DEP rules, I think there's a pretty good chance that's going to be challenged, you know, in statute. We know, you know, that may not be in place forever. And the other thing, frankly, this idea of plastic briquettes, I just think it's a loser. And because it takes energy to do it, and there's very few potential customers that are licensed to burn that, which would be the waste energy plants, Dragon Concrete. Maybe there's a couple other ones that I'm not sure of, but so anyways, I think you need to do a lot of refining. But I agree with John and I agree with Jackie. That I think it's a positive thing. That the MRC owns the plan. Owns the situation, own control outright. This is, I don't mean to offend the people from Revere at all. But I think that's the way forward, is to, take responsibility. Try to refine the process, and it's all about diversion. Now, speaking of diversion, Jackie's talking about getting more people to compost, getting the organics out of, which you're never gonna get all of it. So if you still want to do biogas, I'm sure there's always gonna be organics in the waste stream, okay? But just to get the tonnages down, okay? Because that's how the town saved money. If you're putting out 1,000 tons a year, and people, if you can cut that by 10%, you just saved 100 times $82. It's a significant amount of money for any now. So I would encourage reduction at the source, recycling at the source. And the other thing about this recycling, how much it costs in places, I think there needs to be some reform along those lines. I know, for example, the university very carefully provides opportunities to separate your recycling. And everybody participates in good faith. And it goes to landfill. Just that people don't know that. So that needs to be talked about, but that's not your concern, really. But it's accept that we're all in this together. I wish you well, but I think should maybe consider as we move into the new year, maybe like setting some benchmarks, like quarterly benchmarks, 3 months, we're going to do this, this, and this, and maybe just think about that as these are our goals. And once again, I'm very pleased that you still have open lines of communication with the people at PERC. Probably I should just leave it at that. If anyone has any comments you want to, I can talk. But I do appreciate your efforts, and if Revere ends up being good partners, I think, I wish them well too. But let's just be real. Let's not fool ourselves, and let's consider the public as potential partners in this as well. Like I said, it's waste reduction at the source, no matter how they do it, through the EPR, through backyard composting, through taking your own cardboards to 9 Dragons, they allow you to do that. And just try to get the total waste number down, which as DEP tracks, that is the trend. It's not like this, like we'd like it to be, but it is a glide down. And that's what we need to accelerate. And yeah, so anyways, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your perspective. Great. Anybody else? Want to see any of them?
I'll even step forward and good evening. My name is Susan Dunham Shane. I'm a resident and planning board member of the town of Eddington. I had a question. I think it's probably probably answered by Mr. St. Peter. I'm not sure. Why does this project need permit requirements changed with DEP? Because didn't it meet the requirements the first time around? And what specifically are you asking the DEP to change?
You want to go or you? No. Jointly do it. I could be from, you know, this, the coastal resources of Maine, when they secured the permit, they were operational. And specifically, there was some conditions that the best way to meet the condition was to continue to operate and do some monitoring while it was operating. So it was gonna be net real time as it's operating. Where Revere is coming in, it's been down for a period of time, and they're looking at the condition is, okay, we'd like to meet the condition prior to operating. And therefore, we're just doing items ahead of time with the DEP to convince the DEP that that's a good way to do it. Now, that's kind of the general answer. When we look at the more technical details.
I mean, as a planning board member, we deal with what the requirements are from the state. And while we're formulating our requirements, so I'm intrigued. What environmental things are you asking them to change in the requirement?
Yes, it's a condition of the permit, that and it's the beneficial use permit specifically, so it relates to the pulp. And we were required to do some characterization, some really detailed characterization of the material itself. There was certain contaminants that were detected. And we were going to go to the next step because it was operational and monitor the airborne concentration of items, which was going to be required anyway for worker safety. And you can always wear personal protective equipment if there was contaminants above permissible exposure limits. That's what we were going to do. Now we're going to submit a risk assessment and mitigation techniques ahead of time, which the rule allows for. So the DEP can accept that as a condition, do a condition of compliance prior to operating.
No, that's right. So imagine the catch-22 of, there's a condition in there that you have to do something while the plant is operating. The plant isn't operating. But we've had a healthy dialogue with Haley Ward, our council, and the DEP about how would we satisfy this condition prior to operating, you know, the facility again. That's what this modification to the condition takes into account, which is the risk assessment and procedures and protection procedures be put in place or be agreed to in advance of us going about restarting the facility. And we're confident we'll have that modification and we can move forward.
Thank you very much.
And I think it's important, right? They're actually not changing the conditions, like the conditions still stand. You're just coming up with ways to essentially meet the conditions in advance, even though it's not operating.
And that was the question.
DEP is very clear. You do not change conditions. Conditions are the conditions, but you guys are just basically coming up with a way to sort of predetermine that you can address the issues before you're operating.
One clarification, so it's not misled, is that it's called a minor revision for this specific condition.
Yes.
Because it was contemplated that it was operational and we do some operational monitoring. Therefore, it's pre-operation, so they call it a minor revision, but it is meeting the condition. Okay. I just didn't want.
Sounds very bureaucratic.
More questions, but I just want to make sure that they're addressed to the owl, so people who are still listening.
I know,
You know the direct.
My name is Cheryl Robertson. I am a former town council, so I'm very familiar with what's happening here at MRC. I have a very quick question. Can you yes or no answer even? Mike, are you applying for, or is MRC applying for the EPA recycling infrastructure grants that are currently going on webinars, doing all that fun stuff?
So we're not applying for the education and outreach grant. We're actually specifically excluded from being able to apply for that.
Okay.
Very disappointing.
I know.
But we do have folks looking into applying for the Swiffer infrastructure grant. So,
and will that help? I mean, and I know there's only one, isn't there only like one grant per state that's being, something like that, something.
yeah.
And the one that we received was for education.
Yeah, the one that we went to one of the-
We did get a grant from the Maine Technology Institute, and that was more for actually helping staff up once the plant is going back into operations.
And my other question is, is now that MRC owns the building and owns the land and all that fun stuff. What is the chances of starting something before we have to wait the 90 days for review, like some kind of a, can you get a glass crusher? Can you do something out there that, you know, we can, you know, assure our public? Because I do come from Warner. We are, you know, we hang out with University of Maine professors, and there's a lot of people that are really, you know, I know you said something about patients, but there's a lot of people out there that are really starting to go, when are we gonna be able to do something?
So I will tell you, we just met with DEP as part of the packaging on that. Crushing glass is not a problem, because by the time we get it, it's all crushed. It's been in the back of a rear packer, it's been driven over, it's been dumped on a concrete floor, and it's all crushed. So it's how do we get that glass? So we are talking, I'm not, and then of course it's gonna have to be something with Revere, but yeah, it's not, so right now, glass recyclers, the best way it works for them is they get the glass whole, they get it in a case, or they get it in a carton or a box. You know, once it comes to us, it's been compacted and it's already. So DEP, I don't have a good answer for you, but as part of the packaging, we are looking at what is, you know, our glass does go into our fines. And I know that you and I have talked, and you don't think it's the greatest thing, but the goal for the fines someday, you know, once we get it to where we need to get it, would be for drainage, for road building, for things of that nature. So, but we do get plenty of glass, and we do get it all crushed. And it is going into the fines company. So, but we have to refine some things as part of this vendor package. As part of the package.
Well, our glass is going into our MSW, so it's being separated out. It's not going into our recycling at the moment.
Right. Right. But even if it were to come to our facility as separated, it's still gonna end up on a tipping floor, grabbed with a loader, put into a trommel that spins. It's not gonna end up being whole glass.
Okay, so again, because we're separate, we're not separating it from our MSW. Our MSW, our glass is going,
I
it's not
see.
going into our recycling, it's going into our.
You're asking if you take your glass out of your MSW and
Yes,
put it in
and
your
start,
recycling.
and really start focusing on getting on separating stuff.
So that's something that that's a little bit beyond me. I mean, that's something we'd have to meet with Lauren a lot. And then I don't know if does your hauler want the glass in the recycling, would be accepted in it. So there's a lot to that, but
Right,
we can
yeah.
definitely, I understand what you're saying. While it's not, is it we can look at.
Yeah.
So.
So I'm just gonna pipe in, that there actually is a provision in the mixed waste supply agreement that addresses cooperation around reducing residue. And glass is exactly a classic case of that, because if there's material, the fact is that glass coming into the plant is gonna go out as some sort of residue or low value material. So, and frankly, glass mixed in with waste makes it harder to process the waste anyway. So there are reasons to do what you say, and there's a lot of details and logistics that are tricky to work through, but you know, the concern is noted. In fact, it's something we actually anticipated in the agreements. We wish we weren't this far down the road without a working plan. If we had a working plan now, we'd be working on that, because this is phase 2 and phase 3 type of stuff. Because
Right.
you know, it's of interest of everyone to get the glass in a way that it's handled exactly as you mentioned, and to get the highest and best value. I mean, yeah, I mean, we share the goal, but sometimes you got to take your goals in order, and you know, we haven't gotten to that one yet. So, you know, not happy about that, but we're working on it. Best I can do.
All right. Anything else? Anything else online? All right. Well, there you go. We ended up right on time. Thank you again to everybody who was able to come today and for participating and spending your afternoon with us. Thank you for your support and your interest in what MRC is doing, and stay posted. We've got lots coming up in the next couple of months. So we look forward to some good news for you after the holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you.